right, everybody ready? It is 7 o'clock on Monday, June 28th. I'm going to open the public hearing for the millage rates and the 2021-22 fiscal year budget. Was there anybody here from the public that wanted to comment on the proposed budget or millage rates? I think everybody's here for marijuana. All right, hearing none, then I'm going to close that public hearing, and I'm going to open up the the special meeting for the Board of Trustees at 7 o'clock. That was fast. So if I could have everybody stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please, Catherine.
Bartholomew? Edwards?
Here.
Fowler?
Yes.
Hart?
Here.
Parker?
Here.
Sosniewski? President Alba?
Here.
We have 6 present.
Perfect. We have a quorum. At this time, approval of the agenda. Is there any changes?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Okay.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. At this time, we have public comment. Anybody here from the audience that wants to offer a public comment? If you're here to speak on the marijuana cannabis ordinance issue, I invite you to just wait just till I open up that business item, and then I'll call on you one-on-one. But any other public comments? All right. Then hearing none, we'll move on to our unfinished business for the cannabis ordinance. Trustees, you have in your packet for consideration some bullet points that was from the draft ordinance that you had at your table last week and was emailed out to you late. So we didn't really discuss that, but we talked about, and we did rescind 556, and we discussed entertaining a new 557 ordinance or letting it go as a referendum. As part of that discussion, I invited each person who had emailed or called me to the best of my abilities and invited them here this evening, and I offered them each 5 minutes to come if they had any input or considerations that we should think about on how to improve Ordinance 557 if we should choose to move forward, or if we want to just let this go for a referendum, which we also learned about last month at our closed session meeting. I'm sorry, last Monday. So, who wants to go first from the public for cannabis? Okay, Kathy, right? Tracy, I'm sorry, Tracy. Okay.
Close enough.
Tracy, if you would just state your name for the record, that'd be
Okay,
great.
let me get my eyes
Okay.
on here. My name is Tracy Gore. Do you need my address as well?
If you have it, that would be great. Yes.
21640 John R. Road, Hazel Park, Michigan. And I've been asked to speak by a Romeo businessman who believes that cannabis will be good for the community. I've been a member of the State Bar of Michigan since 1996 and a member of the Cannabis Law Section since its inception. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about some points based on my experience and being in the cannabis arena. And I'm just going to kind of read through it, try to get it in my 5 minutes. So as you're probably aware, in just the last few years, there's been a much greater acceptance of cannabis as both a medicine and as a recreational substance. With the legalization of adult use cannabis in Michigan, the cities have been faced with whether they want to adopt into the system and allow it within their communities. As you may know, cannabis is already in your community by way of delivery from adjacent communities that have opted in, or by your residents traveling away from the village to purchase their cannabis in another city. In addition, the black market still exists in all communities. So if someone wants to purchase cannabis for medicinal or recreational use, they're going to either get it from the black market, go online and have it delivered to their door, or they're going to go to the nearest retail in the next city where they can purchase what they need in a welcoming retail environment. The problem in the latter two situations is that the adjacent community is benefiting from this arrangement and Romeo is not. The adjacent community is benefiting in multiple ways as they are receiving a boost to their tax base, and also these companies are building multi-million-dollar high-end, high-tech facilities. They're also participating in the excise tax revenue by allowing retail establishments, and they are seeing the benefit of high-paying jobs for their residents. In addition, the surrounding businesses in these adjacent communities are benefiting when these customers decide to do the rest of their shopping there instead of keeping it local in Romeo. In deciding whether to opt in, you need to be aware of what might happen if you do not opt in. It's extremely likely that the choice will end up being made by referendum. In that case, you are giving up your ability to craft the ordinance exactly as you see fit. If you craft the ordinance in such a way that it will not affect your downtown area by keeping every license type in the industrial zone, you will be creating a win-win situation for Romeo. In addition, if you allow retail as one of those license types within the industrial zone, you'll be able to capitalize on the excise tax revenue. You will be giving your residents access to the product without going to the next city or town, and you will bring many jobs to the community. By keeping all the license types in the industrial zone, you will reap the benefits of the industry, but be able to keep your historic downtown the way it is now. And from what I have heard, many do not even know that the industrial zone is part of Romeo. If you do allow cannabis businesses in the industrial zone, you may be concerned about how these businesses may impact other existing businesses. And I can tell you from my experience in this industry that you have nothing to worry about. These companies are investing massive amounts of capital to create these very high-tech facilities, which from the outside look like any other industrial company. Because they are brand new in many cases, they bring a modern, fresh look to the zone. These companies go through great lengths to be approved at the state level, and even after licensing, need to remain compliant to maintain their licenses. They pay remarkably high fees to the state and the municipalities every year just to stay in business, so they are not going to jeopardize their licenses by being bad neighbors. As to the decision on how many licenses to approve, you may be thinking about capping the licenses at a certain number. In my experience, this can be a bad idea because it tends to create the incentive for lawsuits. In very tight markets that only allow one or two of each type, there is inevitably going to be at least one party that wants to sue because they did not get a license. In my opinion, it's best to leave the number open and allow the market to dictate which businesses will survive. You can always create buffer zones within the zoning district that will dictate how many can exist within a designated area. By way of example, the Village of Lake Orion decided not to opt in, so a group submitted petitions to force the issue onto the ballot. It ended up passing with 65% support. This exceeded the support level from the 2018 general election, which allowed adult use in Michigan. However, now they have retail locations right on M24. Had they crafted their own ordinance, they could have zoned it in the way they saw fit. By contrast, Orion Township opted in by the Board of Trustees approving an ordinance allowing operation only in the industrial zone, but it did not include retail initially. In the township, there are 2 multi-million-dollar developments being planned for grow, processing, transport, safety compliance, but nowhere is there a retail location within the township. Because of this, plans are now underway to amend the ordinance to allow retail within the industrial zone. With just one of these projects in Orion Township, 65 new jobs are coming to their community. New Baltimore decided to only allow facilities in their industrial zone. They limited to 3 locations and used a competitive application process. They recently decided to opt into adult use. If you choose to allow retail in the industrial zone, the excise tax revenue would go a long way towards city improvements and general budget needs. The Michigan Department of Treasury distributed nearly $10 million to 100 communities for fiscal year 2020. Each eligible municipality and county received approximately $28,000 per licensed retail establishment. For example, Bangor Township, with a population just over 14,000 residents, received $280,000 in excise revenue and an additional $250,000 in collected local fees. They left retail unlimited and put high caps on the other types. By contrast, Orion Township, with a population of 35,000 residents, took in fees of $235,000 for their local fees, but $0 in excise tax revenue because they currently have no retail establishments. They now plan to amend and add retail. In conclusion, it is my belief that it's inevitable that cannabis is here to stay. You can make the decision to create the ordinance in a way that is best for the community by zoning it into the industrial zone, including retail, to give your residents legal access, the village tax base a boost, additional revenue through excise tax and permit fees, or you can leave it up to a group through ballot initiative that may not have the best interest of your community in mind. These are the points you must consider as you make your decision. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Tracy.
Oops.
All right. Who's next? Anybody else?
I'll go next, yeah.
Yes, go ahead. Please give us your name and address.
James McKenna, 57499 Cypress Street, Washington, Michigan. First off, thank you guys for the opportunity to come up here and speak. So more kind of addressing some discussions I've heard that you guys have mentioned, with odor control kind of being one of those. We just want to offer some support and some guidance on that. There's some great companies out there. We've toured multiple expos and facilities through multiple states that have great equipment to help mitigate that, to where we can almost eliminate it from leaving the premises of the facility, especially where you guys have zoned it. That's a great area to put it because there's not much residential in that area. A second thing that you guys have brought up is about minimum scoring requirements. So we do want to voice our support for that. We do believe that Romeo should bring in high caliber tenants or applicants to the city. So I believe you guys last came down to a 60% minimum for that. So we just kind of want to voice some support. If there's anything we can do to offer the help on that, we're definitely here to help. Third thing, kind of being a big one, to kind of keep the door closed for potential lawsuits. So like Tracy had mentioned, limiting the caps on licenses. We've seen that kind of go south pretty bad in some cities, for which they're doing these certain application periods. They're only letting so many people through. So we've seen a lot of companies that don't end up getting a license very quickly retaliate on that. Especially with the area that you guys have zoned, we feel, especially with 1,000 feet borders around the properties, that you guys won't be seeing an excess amount of cultivators and processors in the first place. So we think by removing that limit, that should definitely safeguard you guys from having people come in with potential lawsuits. So we do encourage that as a potential change to go into the ordinance. And then lastly, you know, we just want to kind of voice the encouragement for hoping that you guys do pass through this ordinance and get it amended, because it can bring some great increased tax revenue for you guys. The high-paying jobs that come along with these type of companies are phenomenal, so it can bring some great employment as well, in addition to the tax revenue that's going to come through, because there is quite a bit of capital expenses that will go into these properties. And lastly, you know, we as a company personally do want to help work on commitments within the city to help go towards village development projects, as well as help work with the schools to support horticulture educational grants. Other than that, we hope you guys come to an agreement on this ordinance, and if we can be of any assistance at all, we're always available to help. And that's all I got for today.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it. Who's up next? Trish, did you want to offer a comment?
I was asked to come here today to support the marijuana initiative. I'm Patricia Zako-Sutter. For those of you who don't know me, I know a few of you here. Hi, nice to see you again. I did speak at the Bruce Township board meeting at the beginning of June, also supporting this. And just to give you a little bit about me, I'm a lifelong area resident, although I am not currently a resident of Romeo. We have a lot of family properties. I was a resident once many, many years ago, and I may be again. I'm a graduate from Romeo High School, Oakland University. I'm a retired IT executive, and currently I'm the owner of several residential rental properties across northern Macomb, and I do manage family property in the village. So to anybody who says I don't want marijuana here, too late. That ship has sailed. We already know it's fully legal in 4 countries, 17 U.S. states, Washington, D.C. 36 states have legalized medical cannabis, and legislation to fully legalize cannabis is being introduced around the world, so it won't be long before it's fully legal everywhere. So the point here is it's legal, and I predict it will be fully legal in the United States within the next 15 years. The more we enable the development of legitimate cannabis businesses, the more we put the illegal cannabis dealer out of business and out of the hands of children. You know, we have the 2 choices. You can embrace it, you can shut it out. I think that we should embrace this opportunity. I think that Romeo and Bruce Township should be proactive leaders, help develop and grow this industry here in the Romeo area. It will benefit the entire community by setting standards, collecting tax revenues, everything that you said. Or, you know, if we don't, you know, there's a serious problem. The MRA, Marijuana Regulatory Authority, has published stats that, you know, 80% of the busts with illegal marijuana are coming from communities that have not enacted any legislation to control it. I personally have a property in Armada Township. Armada has not embraced it. Guess what is right next door? Yes, an illegal grow house. We've called the police several times. There's nothing they can do about it. They can come and take the plants. The guy doesn't even live there, but his driver's license says that he does. And they take all but 12, you know? That's all they can do. I don't like it next door to my house there. I know it's a nice area. It's a residential area. It doesn't belong there. So you mentioned jobs, and I fully agree. We're losing Ford. And she mentioned high-paying jobs, high-skilled jobs. You have to be. You got to be a chemist in some cases to be able to deal with this stuff. So, you know, let's grow these processing testing facilities. They employ people. You know, get some retail outlets here so people aren't growing it in their backyard. And here we actually have an advantage over other countries and states that have not fully legalized it yet because, you know, one of the strengths of the American people, and particularly in Southeast Michigan, is our brain power. We have great schools. We've got great R&D here. Let's not waste that talent, you know? So in legitimate cannabis businesses, all the product is accounted for. They can't just sneak some out. Product is going to legitimate retail processing or testing facilities, and I cannot stress this enough, legitimate cannabis can only be purchased by adults. Versus illegal grow houses, Guido's little brother may be snatching a pound, and then it's going into the schools and to the kids. The other thing is you get a better quality cannabis. It's grown under these controlled conditions. You know, through legitimization, we are helping to ensure the quality of the cannabis that is sold in these retail outlets. And we got to put these criminals out of business. Again, I told you about the state of Michigan, the MRA, 80% more busts, and illegal activity in communities that do not have a plan for legal cannabis in place. We don't want the criminals in the cannabis business anymore. We want it legitimized so that we can count on the quality of the product. We don't want the neighborhood drug dealer selling it to the kids. And personally, I am scared that, you know, with these illegal grow houses popping up all over, that somebody's going to hear about it at my neighbor's and come to the wrong place, you know? We don't want that either. So if we can get it in these industrial areas where, you know, it's heavily guarded and they've got cameras all over, it'd be great. So in conclusion, please consider how Romeo should deal with this. I don't think that delaying, ignoring, or putting our heads in the sand is the right answer because it only empowers the criminals. I urge you to embrace the cannabis industry, be the leaders to develop it right. Let's put the processing and the growing and the testing for quality in the light industrial zones. Let's put the retail outlets where we can buy it in legitimate commercial retail areas. And, you know, mostly let's put the criminals out of business. And perhaps if we get it right, you know, we can help to grow a cannabis version of Ockett's Pies or Blake's Orchards. That would be great, wouldn't it?
Perfect.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Trish. Anybody else want to address?
I just have a quick question. My name is Darrell Rao. I live in Washington. I've been out in the area for about 35 years. The reason why I'm here today is I want to have an understanding of the process that you're going to implement for a guy like me, a small guy like me that is interested in developing a business. I've had different businesses throughout my career, and I would like to get into a legal, I have been approved by the state for a 500 plant grow license, a Class A. And I know there's a lot of benefit by big companies coming in and you know, putting up big structures and so on and so forth. I hear about all that, and I was just wondering what Romeo's position was going to be for, if you will, no play on words here, homegrown, you know, individual that can participate in a whole new industry. And I was just wondering, I would like to learn more about what the process will be for the going for the application and how things will be scored, so on and so forth. Because I have ideas of what I think would be important to a community that I've lived in for 35 years, and that's the reason why I'm here tonight.
Did you spell your name R-O-U? Is that
R-A-U.
R-A-U, okay, thank you. Jamie?
Jamie Lucero, 189 West St. Clair, Romeo. I prepared a statement so I don't go over time. I know I have a tendency to do that. So we've all been asked here tonight at the special meeting, and I want to take time and a moment to thank all the participants as well as the Board of Trustees for your guys' time. That said, when IAI first approached, my group IAI, first approached President Malzahn almost 2 years ago, we had no idea we would be here tonight, so many months later, still at square one. The President and the Board have been provided input and recommendations from individuals with direct knowledge and experience in the cannabis industry to help them draft an ordinance that would limit exposure to future legal proceedings, and yet it seems as though you guys chose to disregard the advice. Instead, this board turned to a neighboring community who had been forced to hastily pass legislation and model Romeo's ordinance after theirs. Because of this, we're all here tonight with no solution in sight and the real possibility that this industry will never get off the ground. There are two main issues with the way the current ordinance was written. The first being that the application scoring, and the second being limiting the number of businesses in an already restricted area. The devil's in the details. That is where municipalities are getting sued. The way the scoring is set up is extremely subjective at best. You have not defined what parameters warrant a particular score. Because of this, personal bias can influence and dictate how one scores one applicant over another. The second issue is the fact that not only is the businesses being limited, but also you're requiring them to be a set distance from each other in an already restricted zone. The industrial district is small to begin with. Depending on the location of the first business that gets awarded a license, a second business may not be able to fit within the parameters of that ordinance, which is 1,000 feet away from each other. Regardless of these flaws, the fact remains that an ordinance was passed by this body. Administratively, ignoring a lawfully passed ordinance and shutting down an application process was, quite frankly, unwise and exceeded all authority, real or perceived. The restrictive nature of the current ordinance will bring legal action. That said, if Romeo wants a solution, our group is still willing to work with you guys and the village board to assist where we can. The solution is simple. Pass an ordinance allowing for the following. Allow cannabis businesses to operate in all commercial zones as long as they conform to the setback restrictions put in place by the MMFLA, the MRMTA, and the MRA. Allow for unlimited grows, as it's already been stated, within said commercial zones. Actually, I would say with all of the businesses. Lift the distancing requirements between cannabis businesses. And change the application scoring to a yes-no scoring model rather than a rating scale for each system. If a section is 10 points, if you meet the parameters of that, you get 10 points. It's easy. It's simple. Do this and the concerns that keep being discussed, debated, and nitpicked over the last year and a half become invalid. Furthermore, the concerns regarding odor that keep being brought up are already addressed and regulated by the MMFLA, the MRMTA, and the MRA per their guidelines on environmental pollution, i.e. smell. Lastly, follow the MRMTA and the MRA's guidelines and insert a social equity program into the ordinance. Protect this village, plain and simple. Whether or not my group or anybody else here tonight sues this village should not be a concern. The survival of this village should be. It was that concern for the village and the survival of the village and the knowledge of a solution that prompted my group to approach President Malzahn with the idea of welcoming this business and this industry. Thank you for your time.
Was there anybody else who wanted to speak on this subject?
Hello, my name is Maureen Finn. I'm a resident of Armada at 74241 Teeth Street, Armada, Michigan. I have 20 years' experience in environmental consulting. I am the CEO of Mary Jean Organics, environmental health and safety consulting. And the concerns brought up about odor that I keep hearing over and over again can definitely be addressed through the EPA regulations and the current regulations on the cannabis industry. They are being addressed currently, and if you smell it, they're doing something wrong. So there's other reasons, there's other modes to correct that. In the unregulated locations, that's not being corrected. So that's what you're smelling. You're smelling the guy down the street with him in his yard, or someone with their 12 plants, or someone in an unregulated area. The cannabis industry is a highly regulated industry, and concerns regarding odor can be corrected through the same means as we used in the hospitals for negative pressure, the ICU rooms. We counted on that for COVID, right? To clean the air and suck the virus up during the pandemic. Well, we have the same model for cannabis. And also in hazardous waste, in the confined spaces surrounding industrial facilities, at a TSDF, a treatment storage disposal facility I was employed at, we tested the building regularly to make sure smell wasn't creeping out, and there's a process in place to do that already. And there's a protocol in place to do that in industry. This is an industry. We have regulations for all our industries, and they will also apply to this in the zone that you've chosen. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. Any other people want to comment? Going once, going twice? All right, we're going to close the public comment portion of it.
Yes.
Does
Can
any
I
of this
ask
board?
Tracy a question, please? Tracy, can you come on back up for a second, please? Sure. You mentioned New Baltimore. They moved stuff over to their industrial park,
Right.
and you mentioned something about them limiting the number of...
I believe they limited it to 3, and they had a scoring system in place. And they, it was a very tight scoring, and to my knowledge, they haven't had any lawsuits or anything with it.
So with their current zoning, do they do retail in the industrial?
I believe they did retail, not retail, because initially they started the ordinance with just medical, but just recently now they've opted into adult use, which would allow, if they allow retail. I'm pretty sure that they have retail.
And you mentioned something about it limited the number that they could have there because of what the spacing of the...
No, that, I think you're referring to just, I had mentioned that if you go into the industrial area, even if you leave no cap, you can have buffer zone, like you considering that 1,000-foot buffer. I don't think I had mentioned that with New Baltimore, but I'm not exactly sure how they have, if their distance requirements or anything.
I was just down in your city, Hazel Park, the other day, just finished a job down there at 9 Mile and 75 on the west side.
Okay, yes,
And-
I'm very familiar with Hazel Park.
Woodland Street, yes. And there's a number of grow facilities there, and the neighbors in that area do talk quite a bit about that.
Do you mean unregulated grows, like
I think
people
the
are
young lady
growing?
made a good comment as far as those that you could smell.
Right,
then
yeah.
There's a problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
So-
That is a problem in a lot of the communities
Yeah,
that
and the
people are growing in their
residents
basement
they do
or,
talk about it.
and they're not using scrubbers or filters or anything like that. So that's typically what you're smelling. Most of all of the regulated grows are using, the highest tech scrubbers and everything like that. You wouldn't notice it, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know exactly what you mean,
The
because
residents
Hazel
do.
Park, yeah, they had quite a few of those.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Was there any other trustees that had any questions for anybody who spoke this evening?
Well, Tracy, you had mentioned about the revenues and things like that. Can you talk again a little bit about the revenues from the retail side and the revenues from the
Sure, let me
grower
just-
side?
Yeah, I actually have some specific stats from the state. So when you talk about revenues from the excise tax, you're only going to get that from the adult use retail facility. So there's a 10% excise tax in addition to the 6% regular sales tax, and it's that 10% pot that gets divided amongst all of the cities that have opted in and counties, depending on, how they have it divided out.
And that's only retail.
And it's only for retail. So let's say you decide not to do retail at all, you're not going to take part of that pot. So when I was telling you the difference between Orion and Bangor, Bangor had retail and they had unlimited retail. So they had a pretty substantial, I think it was a couple $100,000 worth of income from the excise tax alone, in addition to their fees. I mean, they did go a little crazy. They had, I think there's 18 licenses though in that small, because it's a pretty small community. Whereas Orion's bigger, it's double the size, and initially they did not do retail. So they got about $230,000 worth of income from their fees. So if you charge, an application fee or whatever, that was what they got that money from. But they got zero because they didn't do retail. But they are now revising their ordinance to have retail. And they have a couple of really big companies, like one is a $40 million project, the other one's a $20 million project, and it's all in their industrial. So.
And is that where the retail's at, out in the industrial?
Well, it's not yet, but I'm guessing that's where it'll be because they only allow in the industrial there. So, but Orion, that's Orion Township. Lake Orion, they ended up letting it go to referendum. And what happened there was it went wherever, where they had to accept it the way it was. And so now they have 2 retails on M24. So that was like the contrast between, do the referendum, let them decide, or let's figure it out, do it the way we think it'll be best, And I have a whole Treasury report. If you want to, you can actually go on the MRA and grab that as well, and it will tell you how they break down the percentages for the retail. And I also have a little chart I can get to you if you want, that shows the different communities and compares and contrasts based on how many licenses they had, how much revenue they got for all the different categories and so forth.
Perfect. If you
So I
wouldn't
can
mind
get that to you.
emailing me a link, I'll make sure that I forward it out
I
to
will
everybody.
definitely do that.
That would be
Yeah.
helpful.
They can take a look at
Okay.
that.
Mhm.
Any other questions?
I have one last one for Mr. Puck. So if we were to attempt to do something similar to the Baltimore, hold our retail in the industrial area, we'd have to do a zoning in addition to our industrial zoning?
I think you would. You amended your zoning ordinance to permit the growing, the inspection, the transportation. So that is, or could be currently accommodated in your existing ordinance as amended. If you were to include retail, I would recommend that you amend your zoning ordinance specifically to permit that. One, the obvious, so that everybody knows that the retail is permitted there, and the other is, I'm assuming, I don't know this, that you don't want other retail in the industrial area. You don't want, it's not going to happen, but you don't want a shoe store, a dime store, those don't exist anymore, but you don't want other retail, I don't think. I guess your planning commission could weigh in on that, but I don't think you want retail generally to creep into your industrial area, but I do think your zoning ordinance could be amended specifically to allow retail in the cannabis business if you see fit to do that.
Just specifically for that cause?
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions?
A question for Jamie. In the past, I think, probably the previous board, right before I was on, we'll say, you had mentioned an additional tax for the grows. Is that not true anymore, or is it changed?
That's up to you guys. That's not up to me. So what we had suggested, what we floated out there to you guys is, since I think it's 1964, the state has allowed for municipalities to levy an excise tax on residents, employees, businesses, or industry. So we floated it out there because The tax is actually the lowest in the United States as far as all of the states that are operating. There leaves room there to actually help the village even more if the village decided to levy an excise tax on businesses as a whole. Because at that time, it wasn't even being discussed, the possibility of retail. The only, that's the big moneymaker right now. Even without retail, you can still participate in those excise taxes, but it's at the county level. And the county's going to decide how much they dole out those taxes, right? Because Bangor Township, as Tracy pointed out, Bangor Township got 280. Bangor is also located within Bay County. Bay County got 280 for all of their retail. Bay County is going to dole that out to the other municipalities that may not have retail, but it's based on participation too, right? So if you only have 20 businesses here and you're going up against a Warren that has a lot, right? Warren's going to get the lion's share of that extra money that Macomb is getting for all of the retail. So that's what we floated out as an idea to hopefully help generate more revenue within the village. But that's not, like I said, that's not us. That would be a decision by this board.
And Justin, I believe Mark told us that that's not an option, an excise tax.
You don't, the ability to collect a tax is wholly a creature of the Michigan legislature. And to my knowledge, the legislature has not given general law villages the ability to levy some type of an excise tax generally on businesses or individuals. There is an ability, and I think it's based on population. I haven't looked at that, but there is the ability, and some communities have done this, to levy an income tax. The city of Detroit does it. I believe the city of Grand Rapids, Warren may do it, but I'm not sure the village could do that. I don't know. I think, and again, I have not looked at it, that the ability to levy an income tax is either directly based on population or a specific legislative authorization. I'm always willing to be educated. I'll listen to anything and review any materials. I'm not aware of any just general ability for the village to levy some type of a tax on business or individuals.
There's, sorry, may as well just stand over here, get my steps in. There's been a law in place that allows for municipalities to levy the said tax since the 1960s, and actually 72 municipalities within the state levy local option taxes, including Hamtramck, Ann Arbor, Adrian, Detroit, Pontiac. There's a lot of them out there.
Again, I'll look at that. I'm not aware of that. I just don't think there's a general ability for a municipality to levy some type of excise tax. But again, if there is, and you can consider it. If there isn't, and you don't need to consider it.
Or perhaps the distinction is the difference between a village and a city.
It could be.
But, okay.
Again, the ability to levy any type of a tax, whether it's a property tax, real property, personal property, the ability to levy any type of a tax is wholly a creature of the state legislature. They allow municipalities to do it, or they forbid them from doing it.
Any other questions? Then if not, per our rules of procedure, before we discuss this further at the board level, I'm going to make a motion that we draft ordinance 557, allowing a cannabis ordinance to be created, utilizing Mark Clark and myself to draft that, and then bring it before you, hopefully for July.
Support.
Okay.
Go ahead, Justin.
Okay. Can you call a roll on that, please?
Just as far as for discussion.
Oh, yeah.
You had, in our packet, is some different things for us to consider. Is it going
Yes.
to consider all of these, or just?
Well, we can talk about that, absolutely. If any additional, if you want me to delete some of these, if there's something else that you've heard tonight that you want to make sure is included in there, we can throw that in here, give me some direction, give Mark some direction.
The idea is to go unlimited with the licenses, and are we then excluding any type of scoring?
Correct.
And keeping the 1,000 feet.
Or you can say that you want to remove that restriction, or you want to change it to 500, or you want to make it 2,000.
Right, and then you had a question for recreational,
Well-
allowing for the sale of medical and recreational.
Right, do we want to consider both? Because New Baltimore, right now, the ordinance and stuff that they have in place, although they've just recently opted in, is only for the medical side. They recently opted in recreational, and they haven't, I believe, they awarded any licenses for that. So I am in receipt of New Baltimore's documents, but they are only on the medical side.
I wouldn't be opposed to both.
Okay.
I wouldn't either.
Okay.
I would like to see maybe some scoring, maybe like Jamie was recommending, not so much a biased scoring process, but a yes or no, so we at least have some qualifications met based on our standards.
Well, based on that, on the second page and the third page where it says license application and there's A through Q, that would sort of be a yes or no. Does the application include each one of these? Yes or no. If it fails and doesn't have every single one of these points, then they would be disqualified, right? Or considered incomplete. And then and then if you read the application review that we stated here, if it's incomplete, Catherine can, sort of, or whoever's doing the application acceptance could say it's disqualified.
I didn't see it on this one. I liked how the other one had stated something about the community outreach and the education aspect for the schools. Is that on here?
Capital for the village, bylaws, identification, promotion. An explanation of economic benefits to the village and job creation. Is that what you mean?
Outreach and
Proposed-
education into the schools and.
H, any proposed community outreach opportunity? On page 2?
Oh, I missed that. Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's the only question I have.
Okay. Any other comments or input?
So I guess, like we stated, should those be yes or no type of thing? This is any proposed community outreach, so yeah or no, then we've got the discretion to approve it or not, if they do or don't? Or is it you give a yes in everything, or you don't get a license? I mean, how would that, it's got to be, I guess, defined or parameters set, saying, yeah, if you don't get a yes in all of them, or half of them, or whatever, that you don't get a license, right? Not so much the individual scoring of, this one's worth 10 points and you only got 4, because that's
Right,
kind of
but
personal
each
bias.
one gets a value, and then you could still say you have to have a certain value. So if it's worth 5 points, you get 5, or 10, you get 10, and you've got to have 80%. And, that would be the.
But if it's worth 10, you're not going to get 5 because you only answered half. You either did or you didn't.
It's a
So you
yes or
get the
no.
points, or,
Right.
yes.
Yeah, you get it or
Get
you
the
don't.
points or you don't.
Yeah. So we have to have some type of understanding of what you have to get there, accomplish.
So we can still agree that there would be a minimum score of the 60 or 65 or 70, whatever number you want it to say, points out of A through Q.
Yeah, I don't know if you need a percentage, just you need how many, A through Q, you need 7 or you need 6 or whatever. Yeses, completions.
Okay.
But then I guess that's still, I don't know, just A,
Well, if you-
no one has A.
Right.
No, everyone's
Right,
got A.
exactly. And so if A is the most important, so you assign the highest point value to that, right? Because that's like, you have to have that, right? But do they have to have short-term and long-term business goals? So maybe that only scores a few points. So if they don't have that, they could still then meet the minimum threshold. Or you can just say they have to complete each one of them.
Does K automatically disqualify?
K, a criminal background report on applicant's criminal history. I would think yes.
That's it.
We don't want criminals operating
That's
cannabis
already
businesses in our village.
State.
Oh, yeah, so there's got to be some parameter set then, basically.
Okay.
Automatic, no, or whatever that might be going through this.
That was in the proposal that was enacted, that we all voted on, that you can't have a criminal background and do this. So that's already covered by this.
For the state regulators. Okay.
So when we originally drafted this, we were talking about this 1,000 feet between growers. Well, now that if you're talking about adding commercial, what's this 1,000 feet? Is it between retail?
It would be for a cannabis business. So it can be,
You would only have maybe, I would say at 1,000 feet, what are you gonna get, four businesses in that goal?
I don't know if you get that many, but,
Three?
yeah.
So you could have one retail and two process?
Also considering that it can't be within 500 feet of the school, so technically the truck driving school would exclude the southern end if they still remain there, right? It would just
Talking
limit
about
that.
a pretty limited number of, very limited, actually. I don't know, would we want to think about 500 feet rather than 1,000?
I was thinking that too.
Are you talking about 500 for your industrial?
Yes.
And it might even be a separate between a grower and a retail. You don't want the retails within a certain distance of each other, but a retail could be next to a grower and they wouldn't be impacting each other.
Right, because an applicant doesn't necessarily have to be an applicant to grow. An applicant is an applicant, no matter what, if they want to apply for just a retail, or if they want a vertical type of business that's grow, compliance, and retail all in one,
You can make that-
$20 million building.
If you want to transport your own stuff, I don't know if you do that, then you got to have a separate facility for that, and a separate facility for your grow,
So you
or
wanna keep that
your
balance.
processing, and, because we have multiple types of licenses.
Well, that would be up to the state, I would
Shorten it
think.
down for the retail.
I'm sorry, what did
I
you
said
say,
you
Zach?
shorten it down instead of 1,000
I
feet.
like the 500 too,
Retail.
because it's just, it's small enough.
Something that we have to do is zoning or a planning
We don't have a
commission.
huge industrial.
We can make it.
Zoning, planning.
Yeah.
So perhaps I'll reach out to Steve Cassidy, who can look at some GIS maps and just sort of do some radius testing, right? So if we had one on McLean Drive, what are our options within 500 or 700 or 1,000 feet to see what realistically it could be? Because obviously it's going to be different if you're all the way at the end of McLean Drive versus on Powell, right? That's longer than 500 or 1,000 feet. So I could get a better idea maybe from his mapping what that area would
Yeah, because I
actually
don't have a
hold.
good feel for it. I'm just thinking in my mind, 1,000 feet's 20% of a mile, so. We don't have that many miles out there of industrial park.
Well, so how many would you be comfortable having, right? You want to have 10, you want to have 4, you want to have 1? Give me a parameter so that if Mark and I are doing this work and I reach out to Steve and he says, well, if you did this and created this triangular pattern, you might get 5. Is 5 okay?
I'd be comfortable with
That's
like
what?
4, 5, 6.
31 to 30, 32 to 33 is a mile, roughly. 5,000 some feet, just
Yep.
straight.
But you take out that whole first corner because 32 mile because of the trucking school.
Yeah,
So you lose that.
so you lose that.
So now you vertically,
I mean,
Unless you want to eliminate that regulation, which is in your zoning ordinance.
I'd say keep distances from schools.
Is an adult school a school, right? Is that, are you talking about
I mean,
elementary
that's
school,
what the original
right?
ordinance had secondary schools written in there.
Right.
So I guess for many, you would have to define that. I would think more youth-related schools or programs that are out there, as the gymnastics school.
There's no minors at that school.
At the driving
I would
school?
imagine unless you want
it's not going to be a teenager.
But they got to be at least 16 if they're going to driving school.
CDL, I think you could be older than get a CDL.
I don't know, but.
Yeah,
I think we got most of this together, and it sounds like we're in agreement.
Okay.
And that if you maybe can come back with a little bit of data to make a recommendation, whether it should be 500 or 750, or what those impact would be, we'd be able to just fine tune that ordinance that at the time we pass it, so.
Mark, is it an issue finding out about that local sales?
Excise tax? The
No,
excise tax?
no, I can,
Okay, because I just wondered if Jamie could maybe email the information.
sure, yeah, it's determinable. I just don't think you can do it, but if you can, then you'd want to consider that.
Okay, I guess we need to know that, yes or no for sure.
Because we don't have to worry about smell. What would be the issue with not having any restriction on distance? And just let the market determine who makes it and who doesn't?
We do have existing facilities out there.
Yeah, they're currently operating. It's not like you're just going to walk out.
Well, I'm okay with that, too.
cram something in right next door.
Because I think distances is more for like schools and stuff.
I do think you have to be mindful of the existing businesses that are out there, and, you know, some of them are international.
You're saying I
Right.
can put one here next to A and B, and they're right there, but now we don't want one over here. So you already got 2 or 3 businesses surrounding the facility already, and if it's not an issue with the odor, why are we saying it's okay for you to be around these 3 or 4 businesses, but you can't be over here now because we've just limited you, and you gotta take into account the other businesses out there, which I respect, but
I was thinking it was a way to kind of govern how many would be able to be put in there. You know, having that restriction would naturally reduce the number of it, because I don't know how this would go, but the industrial district, I'd hate for the rent to be double because people want to be there, and all of a sudden, it's a bunch of grow facilities. The industrial businesses are kind of impact, and then in 5 years, the thing kind of changes. I don't know, but I'm thinking I wouldn't want to harm, right, if it's going double rent, they're going to rent for as
not
much
so
as
much
they
to the
could.
neighbor, what it's gonna do to them in the long term. Respect that.
So that was my thought.
Well, if we're going down that road, why only limit a storefront to the industrial district? Why not let it be downtown? If they're so state of the art and nice and clean and
Because we don't want it in our backyard.
thousands of dollars per enter, why not let it be downtown?
But, I mean, it's like having a party store, I don't think it's gonna create that type of issue.
Well, my initial concern was the ones, the businesses that I visited, retail, although very nice. Honestly, I walked in, thought I was probably in a high-end jewelry store. Wasn't really what I had anticipated, but there were still armed security guards in the parking lot. And when I think about armed security guards on our sidewalks in our central business district, I don't really think that attracts families who want to walk up to get an ice cream cone or a cup of coffee at Main Street. So I do think that there's a value to making sure that it's, right, our community is still,
Well, they've all been within 5.
right, it's still the family environment that we want it to be.
And any residents I've talked to, that was something that was a big concern. Where
I can
putting in
respect
the
that, I
industrial-
just play devil's advocate, I mean, you're talking about putting an officer at the middle school, right? Isn't that basically doing the same thing? You're putting someone there to guard our asset?
No, that's a safety officer, and that's a totally
I respect
different,
that, but
that's a
you're gonna have
totally different.
An armed officer, right, at a school, which I'm not opposed to, but, I mean, I'm just playing devil's advocate, it's
But-
kind of the same thing, right? You're protecting.
But it is a difference between a licensed, trained law enforcement officer or a security guard. There is a difference. There's a difference in resources, there's a difference in training, there's a difference in mutual aid. There's a big difference between security forces, which is what the high school or the school districts could do, or having an actual licensed law enforcement officer on site. 2 totally different things.
I think the river, you gotta be 500 feet from a church, right?
Yeah.
So River of God would kind of mess it up for a lot of businesses. Then there's more, yeah, it would be tough.
Yeah,
There's churches everywhere around town.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you think about that.
So, limited by the zoning, right?
Keep it in the industrial.
Someone find the one spot.
Keep it in the industrial.
One niche.
Industrial?
Just for zoning.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Okay.
You have a motion on it.
I have a motion and support. Is there any other discussion? All right, call the roll, please. Catherine?
Mills on?
Yes.
Sorry, Parker?
Yes.
Bartholomew?
Yes.
Edwards?
Yes.
Fowler?
Yes.
Hart?
Yes.
Poznanski?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Okay. Okay. Mass
Thank you for
exodus,
everyone that came.
or you can stay. You might be in between the raindrops if you leave now.
Thank you, everybody.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies. Thank you.
It is good to have you.
Yes. Yes, it was.
Hey, Christine.
See ya.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to new business. We have the adoption of our millage rates and the 2021-22 budget. So in your packet, you have a copy of the budget and millage rates. That's the legal size, the long 14-inch. You also have the L29 forms, 4029 forms that are in your packet for the DDA and the operating Act 51 money and the cemetery millage rates. So I can just...
On the top, I'd just like to point out,
I know you're more
this agenda was not posted on the website, correct? And I know a lot of our residents are reaching out to the website, it brought to my attention that I don't think the adoption of the millage rate was on our website.
Yes, it was.
I think the public hearing was, but I don't think item number A was on there correctly. I don't think it currently is either.
This whole page and the public notice is on the website.
It's not. I checked again right when I sat down just to double make sure before I brought it up, it wasn't on there.
Oh, I have it in 2 places on the website. Did you check both places?
I pulled up under the event on the calendar,
Okay.
pull it up, and it's not in there. It brought to my attention by several residents, and it wasn't on there. So we just gotta make sure if we're gonna post stuff, that we got it correctly posted. Because maybe someone else would have showed up, I don't know, but I'm just saying.
Is it in its other location then, on the website?
What's that? I went to the events, and...
Just so I know if
Yeah.
there's something wrong with our software?
Events. I can't pull it up. It's slow, but yeah. I don't know about this. Click on the 28th, click on the link, and it opens up and it says item, new business A's fiscal year 2021 budget approval. It says nothing about the adoption of millage rate. No. Yeah. I mean, I know it might have been posted correctly in the front window, but we got residents going to the website. And this
Okay, well, I'm sorry. Can we back up? I'm just confused because when I pull it up, it says Village of Romeo, notice of public hearing on 2021-22 budget and millage rates, and it has this whole page. Just if you could just point out what I'm looking at and what you're looking at.
Sure. New business, A. Because we have to make a motion to do that, so it has to be on the agenda.
Okay, but it's right here, adoption of millage rates.
Yeah, but it's not on the, it's right there, A. It's
Okay.
not on the website.
All right. Well, thank you for pointing out my mistakes.
On June 28th, wait, so I'm still confused, because maybe I'm looking at something different. On the calendar,
Yeah.
it says June 28th, 7 o'clock,
Go to,
the public hearing.
Yep, public hearing.
And then below
and go to new
is
items,
this.
which we have to make a motion under new fiscal year 2021 budget approval. Says nothing about
Oh,
the
the
millage.
millage rate, okay. Not
Nothing.
that the agenda wasn't on there, then it
Oh,
just...
I misunderstood. I thought you said the
We have
whole.
to make an official motion, and it has to be on the agenda, so that we
Right.
can make that motion. And if it wasn't posted that way, then technically we can't make that motion and vote on it.
Well, these 2 items were in the window.
Yeah.
'Cause when I print them out for your packets, they go straight to the window, that same motion.
I got one, but half the residents that don't walk up to the village hall to look in the window
Okay.
are looking on the website that we've paid and provided for them. And if information isn't correct on there, then we're misleading.
Okay, and can I ask you when you figured this, when this was brought to your attention?
Today.
Today? Okay.
2 residents called me today and said, what's on the agenda? And I was going through it, and they're like, oh, the one I saw Didn't say.
Okay, I misunderstood. I thought you said the public hearing notice wasn't on there.
No.
Okay,
The new
okay.
business agenda item.
Isn't the budget kind of,
Yeah, but I think
blanket
it's two
statement
separate,
setting
it's
the
two
millage?
separate motions, correct?
setting
Yes.
the millage
Oh.
rates and everything?
Is
Yes.
it two separate motions, Accountant Tim?
We're talking about
Okay, thank you.
the same thing.
Just verifying.
Yes.
So I just don't know if that creates issue because it was posted incorrectly.
Well, so we've had the public hearing. We can certainly table the millage rates in the voting on the 429s, if it wasn't agenda on there, and we can still talk about the budget, which was on there, and get the budget adopted.
I'm sorry, Ms. Milzine, President Milzine, can you repeat that last statement?
Adoption of the millage.
I'm sorry.
Can we do the budget without the adoption of the millage?
Accountant Tim, can we ask for your input on this, please?
Is that illegal?
It's the same thing.
Right.
Thank you.
No, it's the same, but-
Budget is one, the resolution is one document. I don't know what you have.
It's two separate resolutions, correct?
You should make a separate resolution adopting your millage rates. And I would recommend in the resolution, you specify the millage rates. You have them broken out in the notice. And once you've established your millage rates, you can adopt your budget. Without the determination of your millage rates, you don't have the ability to levy taxes to support your budget.
And we have to do that this month before July.
But I understand Justin's point, but if the notice was published and it sets forth that the budget and also sets forth, and I assume is the appropriate size type, because the statute requires a certain size type, the property tax millage rate proposed to be levied to support the proposed budget will be a subject of this hearing. So I think you're positioned well enough to proceed, but I would recommend you proceed in the proper fashion, and that is to adopt your millage rates and then adopt your budget if that's what you choose to do. But I don't think you can adopt your budget and not adopt your millage rates or set your millage rates by a vote, because then you haven't given yourself the ability to levy the millage.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the millage of 14.8976 mils. 12.7016 of that is toward the general fund operating. 1.4520 mils is toward the general highway fund, and 0.7440 mils is put towards the cemetery, totaling 14.8976 mils.
I'll support.
Who shall I go with?
We'll let Nathan have this one, yes. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Edwards?
Yes.
Bartholomew?
Yes.
Poznanski?
Yes.
Parker?
No.
Hart?
Yes.
Fowler?
No.
President Milzine?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-2.
Okay. Then you also have, do we need to vote on the library millage rates, even though we have them, the 4029 form for us to sign, but we don't collect that tax?
No, we don't.
Okay.
Okay.
She has them there, so, okay. And then you have the DDA, Romeo DDA 4029 form as well. That 2021 rate will be 1.8004. So I'll make a motion to, for that millage rate, 1.8004 for the DDA.
Support?
Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
President Milzine?
Yes.
Edwards?
Yes.
Fowler?
Yes.
Bartholomew?
Yes.
Parker?
No.
Poznanski?
Yes.
Hart?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-1.
All right. Then we can move on to the fiscal year 21-22 budget that you have, recommended budget. We went over this
I'd like to
several
make a motion-
times.
Make a motion that we approve the 21-22 budget.
We have a motion by Bartholomew. We have support by Hart. Any other discussion?
The contingency line on the front page, what does that encompass?
The contingency line. on the-
260. And the total of 157,000. Zero the last two.
On the front page of this?
Page 1?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't follow.
Yeah.
GL number 101-260.
Fifth one down.
260.
On top.
Corporation 260. 00, and then this year, next year, we're looking at 157.
Oh, the contingency, right, that's the placeholder for the wage and compensation in unions. That's what's anticipated.
Okay, that's the 157.
Yes.
In total?
I believe, correct, Tim?
I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe that number.
Yes.
But
Mhm.
that's what that line represents.
Yeah. All right, any other questions? Call the roll, please.
Bartholomew?
Yes.
Hart?
Yes.
Fowler?
No.
President Milzan?
Can you please clarify your no?
No.
What are you not supporting?
You have, I disagree with your current pay of the $75 that's going to be locked in there. I disagree with what Tim told us as far as the meeting you weren't here, Matt was here. You still have funds in the village to city for that thing processing.
No.
You haven't said anything else different from it. I haven't
We
heard it.
don't have that. We went over that at the
So
last
I
budget workshop
vote
meeting.
no. It's no.
Okay, there is nothing in there for village to city.
I disagree.
But there is money in there for consulting services, but it's not earmarked for any
they're
project.
still
But that's
doing
okay.
research.
Thanks for clarifying.
Still doing research on it.
Thanks for clarifying. Keep going.
Okay. So far, Bartholomew, Hart, Edwards, Fowler, Edwards,
Yes.
Poznanski,
No,
Please clarify your no vote.
I did not abstain, so I voted no. I do not need to clarify my answer in voting no. You only clarify in abstaining.
Okay, I just wanted the people the opportunity to understand
We're just
why
wondering
you're
why you
voting.
want to be non-compliant with the
For
state.
weeks and
People
weeks and
can
weeks,
ask.
and I hear nothing that
Yeah,
wasn't.
and the one that you were at, the people that were here made.
We took out a bunch of projects.
recommendation To move forward without having anything in the budget that didn't have a set or signed project to. And we got 75,000 in there for something we don't even know. We can amend and change the budget whenever we want throughout the year, so if that money stays in the fund, the project comes along that is proposed, voted on, and approved, we can pull that money out of the fund at any time. So why are we putting money into the budget that we have no idea what it's gonna be spent for? That's the issue I have. And that's what the issue was when you sat with me, Megan,
You
Matt.
still got your $5,000
Fowler.
for lights repairs, right? At the village hall?
And
No, I
you
heard
said
it was
you
just
put
a
extra
break.
5,000, yeah,
Yeah,
for
it was
the
just a
light
break
wasn't
and they
working, the
fixed
plug
it.
wasn't working?
We
The whole wall wasn't working.
Yeah, we have a lot of
The whole wall's
electrical
not working.
issues. Mhm. But, okay.
Yeah, no, so-
Okay. We are up to President Milzan
Yes?
and Parker.
No,
Did you want to
You have a
clarify your no vote?
I think I just did.
Okay, just asking you the opportunity. Yep.
We have a 4-3 vote.
Okay. Budget passes. All right, just to let everybody know, the budget to actual report, end of May, indicated that general fund revenues are at 111%, so we've received more money than what we did budget for, and our expenditures are only at 81%. So we have underspent our budget by 19% and received more revenue. So we'll be adding to the general fund balance.
It's a nice budget.
Yes, it's a balanced budget. It doesn't use any prior year. All right, moving on to new business B, fleet vehicle repairs. This came up, Chief Dan is decommissioning that second municipal fleet vehicle. Expert Automotive has it, and Christina Rea reported back to me that it does need some repairs. The amount estimated, $3,266. You can see the breakdown on the sheet. Needs new catalytic converters, some wheel bearings, She says it's a good vehicle. It's safe to drive, but it does need some work. So if we're going to keep it as a fleet vehicle, the blue market value on the one that we sold to Bruce Township was at nearly $8,000. So putting this amount of money into that car still is less than what it would be if we were to sell it.
I'd like to make a motion that we move forward with Expert Automotive to fix our...
All right, so we have a motion by Bartholomew.
If I may. I'm sorry, what's the second one?
There was no second yet? No second yet.
The vehicle is currently over at S&J Auto getting the wheel bearing repaired right now. So I haven't talked to Christina over at Expert about any repairs or anything like that.
Okay. Did you get an estimate? Do you know how much that was?
He's doing it right now. He's not finished yet, but.
It says 225 for the wheel bearing.
here.
Plus,
Most of that work was for the catalytic converters.
Yes.
As
There might be
S&J
some kind of recall on that. We'll have to check with Ford first. There are recalls on that 2014 vehicle, and one of them might be the catalytic converters.
Okay.
So, yeah, go
I
ahead.
think before we, I'm sorry.
It definitely needs repairs. That's why we're getting rid of it.
I would think before we move forward,
We'll
like
have
you
to
say,
need to vote.
get rid of it, we should probably. know
Well,
what-
Christina's telling me it needs 2 new catalytic converters. Whether or not that's covered under a recall, I would think that they would have known that, but I don't know that for a fact.
I've got
2
a motion,
catalytic
I'd say
converters,
Table this so we have all the information.
the wheel hub, and the wheel bearings.
Especially since the wheel bearings are now being done in a different place.
So is this something that you can
It was
just handle, take care of out of
225.
general fund? We don't need to approve this Expert Automotive?
Well, if the wheel bearings were already being worked on and we're subtracting that, then it's less than my
We don't-
$3,000
we don't need
for
to-
authorization.
We don't need to approve this?
Correct.
And Chief, you got over S&J, so is this something you can just handle out of general fund?
This isn't a mistake.
It'll still be under motor pool. It won't be under general fund, it would be under motor pool, but yes,
We don't need to.
I can authorize the repairs, but not at this $3,200. But
Okay.
if it's less than that, then
The wheel
absolutely.
bearings are out of the question now, so.
Yes.
I was actually paying for wheel bearings out of my budget.
That's like $400.
Bonus, okay.
So, Andy, you said you guys were getting rid of it because it needed so much in repairs.
Oh, we're good, it was older, and
And we're looking at picking it up as a
Fleet car.
fleet car to use.
So I'll rescind my motion then at this time.
I would say,
Okay.
Just
what would
say
that
table.
do to, because then we'd have an additional vehicle with insurance, is that correct? So we'd have an increased insurance cost, and then even at $30,000, it seems like a lot of mileage reimbursement that we can do for $3,000 plus additional cost of having an older vehicle. I don't even know if I'd say we should just probably get rid of it at that point.
I'd be curious to see about the recall though, because that's an awfully new vehicle to have catalytic converter problems already.
Yeah, if it's a recall, that's different, but I was
We'll just wait.
I'm not sure, there are different recalls on it. The issue is with those police vehicles, it's not mileage though, it's
Idle
hours.
Yeah.
Right, which is like 500 idle hours, I think is what 500 miles.
I don't know if-
For idle, right.
It still has a lot of life in it, it still surprisingly looks kind of good, I just looked at it today thinking, it's got a good shine to it and all that.
I'm understanding it needs a detail.
Yeah, it definitely needs a detail. I was going to have that done over at the new shop. I can't recall what it is, 32 mile road. And, roadworthy, I think it's, for the purpose of the village, I think it's fine the way it is.
All right, so Nathan rescinded his motion, so I can just do that either administratively, or if it comes back with a higher estimate than what I can approve, I'll bring it back for board approval next month. We're not under any time frame to get it done, it's just that it was in the shop, and we were just waiting, we already had tonight's meeting on the book.
Is there any approval needed to bring that on, keep it on? Because that's additional cost to the village to have that, or is that just something that can be done, or do we have to vote on throwing that on, keeping it as a...
Should be added to our.
city vehicle? Not just added, I mean, it's an additional cost.
It's already insured through the village, so
Right.
that's not gonna change. Right, that's not gonna change.
We wouldn't know until February of '22 if our insurance rate is going to change by keeping it. Because we
Well, you're adding another vehicle, so.
Correct, but we wouldn't know until '22.
We're not just gonna
And
keep it
it's
the
going
same.
to add like 50 cents the way our motor pool liability insurance works.
50 cents, that's
I mean,
pretty
it's,
low.
the way our liability insurance works.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn?
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Meeting adjourned.
Thanks, Matt. That was on cue.